What's up? It's me, your boy. We're talking Barry today. Enjoy.
Why evil?
Huh?
Am I like an evil person?
Oh my god. I mean, absolutely. Do I not tell you that enough? You are like the most evil guy I know, man.
But, I take no pleasure in killing people. You know that, right?
Man, all this talking has made me hungry. You know what I could really go for? The Oceanite beef bowl.
If you're anything like me and love the show Barry, the religious turn towards the end of the series came out as a bit of a twist. Up to that point, religion wasn't a talking point made by any of the secular California actors or effeminate gangsters alike. Outside of a second season gunfight that took place inside of a Buddhist compound, religion as a topic wasn't a theme or philosophical mainstay presented by the series. It seems the filmmakers used the temples of Christianity's forgiveness concept as a tool for the character of Barry to superficially forgive himself without doing any of the legwork or owning up to his wrongdoing.
Lord, please give us the strength to get through these next 24 hours. Please give John the strength to know that his daddy's going to be back from LA and that he's going to be okay. Please give Mommy the strength to not leave the house and to tend to John's needs. Amen.
Barry, a character who was notorious for shirking off responsibilities, used Christianity in the only way he knew how, as a weapon to manipulate, instead of the proper transformative emptying I'd argue most modern-day Christians would agree with. The religious spin towards the end of the series always felt like it should have felt off, though it never did, and it made me wonder why. There are aspects of the final season that are over the top and feel otherworldly, something more akin to lynching horror elements that weren't presented during the beginning season's black comedy era. I'd like to pose an argument that the 7 major character storylines at the end of this series are all built towards a common goal. Although, an admittedly half-baked theory on my part, I'd like to posit that the series had underlying Christian talking points throughout it. This goes without saying, spoilers for Barry. Like, comment, subscribe! Barry is a fantastic show if you haven't seen it. It came out during the era of like that Breaking Bad renaissance where it's like you had all these like anti-heroes like Tommy Shelby and like all these like dark characters like I'm so troubled. Barry is that, don't get me wrong, it is 100% that, but it makes the concept of that so pathetic, weird, and wrong that you sympathize, but you don't empathize. Like, you feel bad for Barry, you want him to do better, but like he absolutely refuses to do so. And it humanizes that kind of mentality more so than any other series that I have seen.
Sorry, what?
I said, did you grow up out here, Bobby?
My name is
Bill Hader as a creative, I love him. I love everything that he's done. His work on SNL is obviously fantastic. Every movie he's been in, he was Fear in Inside Out. He was a character from It. He's done a whole bunch of different stuff. But Barry seems to be his magnum opus. And I'm really excited to see where his career goes after this. Because if this is what he can do with just like creative freedom, I really want to see what else he can do. I want to see movies. I want to see series from him. Obviously, like, as an actor, but, like, just as a storyteller in general. I want to see more of him. And it's very frustrating to me that nobody has given him anything else yet.
Like, Lady Macbeth thought that she can kill whoever she wanted to kill to be in charge and then just move on, but she can't. You know, like, because once you start killing, you can never just go back. That's what the stain is. She's stained forever.
I'm not sure that's true.
I've seen videos on, like, how, like, Walter White wasn't the only person in Breaking Bad who was evil. Like, you have Hank, who did some bad stuff, and, like, Marie, and so on and so forth, Skyler, whoever. I always thought that those were, like, no, Walt is 100% the worst person in that series. Barry, there are multiple people who are just, like, really, really bad. Obviously, Barry's probably one of the worst, but I don't think he is the worst. I really don't. There are so many other characters who just, like, do terrible, terrible things, are unrepentant about it, and are so short-sighted that they actually don't know why they got there. The characters I'm about to mention exhibit different wrongdoing. There are characters who do this wrong and this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. But where is it coming from? I think the series of Barry really is about like how your choices are whom you are, not who you want to be. The things that you do is who you truly are. It doesn't matter what you say or how good you are at acting or convincing people otherwise. Your choices are who you are. There are 7 major characters in the story of Barry that are, if not within the very first episode, are in the second episode, or felt from the very beginning of the series. There's only one character who's not introduced in the first season that is a mainstay, but that's only because like he is related to a character who was a mainstay of it from the very first season. Within the religion of Christianity, there is the 7 deadly sins. Obviously, there are other things out there like the 7 universal faces in psychology, 7 dwarves, so on and so forth. But because Barry at the end of the series took such a weird religious turn, it made me start thinking what other religious aspects of the series it had.
Barry Berkman!
Barry.
Barry Berkman!
Barry.
Barry Berkman!
Barry. Is that what really happened?
Yeah.
On an emotional standpoint, as a character, Barry is incredibly self-conscious, constantly measuring himself against others, and in desperate need of validation from outside sources. And speaking from a strictly physical point of view, he's the Terminator. That his singular character can stand up to his combative prowess, and his only true shortcoming is his fractured psychology. Much like Breaking Bad, Homeland, Game of Thrones, The Boys, and other modern dramas, Barry as a show has an interesting relationship with chance. It's as if a cosmic deity were putting its thumbs on the scale for the narrative. If something is left to chance, the worst possible outcome will always occur, even if it seems lucky to begin with. Barry was given countless opportunities to end his criminal activity, make the hard choice, and confess to his sins. Not only to others, but to himself. He didn't need to kill Detective Moss. He didn't need to commit a vast majority of his hits. And he was even given the perfect opportunity to confide in an ally about his wrongdoings and be set on the right path. Barry's choices came from a desire to both find a place in the world where he could be praised for his talent, as well as use the duffel bag of pain he carried with him. His ultimate fate, to turn himself in and walk into the light, so to speak, was only cut short when he was shot. His ultimate, and deeply ironic fate, would be that he would be improperly remembered by using his combative prowess for good, instead of the opportunistic scandal it truly was. He would never be remembered as an actor, and only a character. The tragedy being that the general public would never know the truth and only perpetuate the bold lie of Barry's innocence. One of the 7 deadly sins is envy. The envy is somebody who more or less believes themselves to be lesser than somebody else, and who just is just constantly I want to be more, I want to be just like them. You have something that I want to take it. I'm going to bring up Bible stories. The very first human being was not Adam and Eve. They were, created by God, but the very first human was Cain and Abel. He was the first human who was born. And the first human who was born killed his younger brother because he was envious of that person. His younger brother was better at harvesting crops than he was. He took it out on his younger brother and killed him. That's more or less where envy comes from. Envy comes from a place of somebody has something that you want and you see no other way of getting to it. I'm of the opinion that Barry, to his core, is truly just envious. He more or less grew up without a dad. Fuchs was his surrogate father. He constantly needed validation and praise. Somebody who was wrathful didn't necessarily need that. Obviously, there are multiple factors here with the character of Barry. He exhibits many wrong things about his personality. That being said, the thing that drives him isn't any of those things. The thing that drives him is he believes himself to be lesser. He is tragic, has this childlike innocence, even though what he does is absolutely repugnant.
Warner Brothers wants to make a movie of my life.
Of course.
I came to kill the movie because I don't want that kind of
I
attention.
don't believe that.
Throughout the series, only characters bold enough to not placate to Gene Kusnow's ego confront him over his egotistical ways, most notably his son. Even scenes without Gene, those closest to him seemingly have him on the forefront of their mind, as if he were an altruistic coach who truly wanted the best for them. Though, that's not the case. Gene has gone out of his way to sculpt a cocoon of comfort around himself. Those he spends the most time with are people who literally pay him and worship his every word. In reality, he's been blacklisted and denigrated by the industry he supposedly champions. Outside of Sally, an actress he never particularly saw as a pupil, his students seemingly never aspire to greatness or merit praise for their lackluster abilities. Even Sally's assistant, Natalie, who eventually rose in the ranks of Hollywood, seemingly never did so for her abilities, and possibly only made it through proximity and exposure. With that said, I'd make the argument that Gene never began his acting school endeavor to truly empower or even find actors employment. While he obviously wanted to make profit from his skill set, he cultivated his students with the same militaristic discipline Barry had been used to. Not to enrich his underlings, but to keep them in line, and to milk them for more and more money. But more importantly, infuse his ego with nitroglycerin, and keep the lifeblood of praise pumping through his veins. In the end, Gene gets what he always wanted, attention and notoriety. Instead of a loving and long-standing relationship with his son and family, he's forever immortalized as a larger-than-life comic book villain and a woeful retelling in the events of Barry as the mask collector, having no one but himself to blame for his choices.
This acting teacher asked his students to buy his original art. They had no money, and he wanted them to buy his art. That is an
And thus Gene Cousineau.
This sin, pride, as a sin, it's said to be the most deadly of the sins, only because, like, this is the hardest one to identify. If you're gluttonous, usually you're a little heavier. If you're greedy, you usually have a lot of money. Pride, on the other hand, really the only thing you have to show for it is yourself. And your own ego and your own mental shortcomings is really difficult to identify. As a storytelling device, like, pride for a character is really interesting to use because in Breaking Bad, the character of Walter White 100% exhibits that sin more so than any other character. He's very egotistical, ego-driven, so on and so forth. To make Gene Cousineau the one that exhibits the most pride in this series is absolutely fascinating to me, only because in a more simplistic view of this show, the character of Barry would have exhibited this. If you were to be like, oh, you can't be prideful. Look at this character who's prideful, our titular character. This is the story of how his falling. No, you make it Gene Cousineau, who's like a secondary character to the Barry character. And it's like you make it way more complex and intricate doing it that way. Gene Cousineau, like his son tells him all the time, like, the school is really just a monument to your ego. And there's a whole bunch of other things that happen throughout this show where characters call out Gene Cousineau just for being an egotistical piece of shit. He goes on like auditions for like bit parts and stuff, and people always kind of like call him out for being like such an egotistical prick.
I was a poser, and I fancied myself a mentor, fostering other men's natural abilities, but it wasn't until I was in prison and I got beaten to within an inch of my life day after day that I finally dropped the bullshit and just accepted who I am. Man with no heart.
In the world of Barry, Fuchs is one of the heavier characters and one of the most indulgent. He skims most of his money from Barry's hit jobs, obviously enjoys himself a meal, and even tries using the touch of a woman to bribe his captor for release. As one of the more repugnant and irreverent characters, there's no shortness of examples for his depravity. It's obvious any of the other sins would fit within his lifestyle, but his overindulgent mentality and unquenchable desire to consume both resources and others is a clear presentation to his gluttonous ways. He does his best to control Barry so he can engorge himself with funds which he spends on self-pleasure. By the end of the series, Fuchs becomes a larger-than-life, true-to-form mobster that has an otherworldly presence. His ultimate fate is left ambiguous after he saves Barry's son from a hopefully better future. In a rare, sober moment, Fuchs allows his humanity to shine through. But we're left to believe he'll forever be on the run and on the back foot against the authorities, forever tormented by his indulgent past and constantly feeding the endless hunger from within him. So yeah, no, Fuchs is a little heavier. Obviously, like, he's a liar, he's a cheater, he's a stealer, like, he does, like, a whole bunch of, like, bad stuff, but, like, the place where he comes from is just, like, overconsumption. He finds himself in situations where he can't get his way out of, and other people have to bail him out. The thing that drives him is gluttony. He just wants to be gluttonous and consume. He's just, an overindulgent person, and that's with flesh, with food, with money. He wants it all. Each character can exhibit a 7 deadly sin, but it's the one that outweighs the balance that is the one that is the deadliest to them. If you agree, like, comment, and subscribe.
I've been keeping us safe.
Look, I would never fall in love with a psychopath.
Yeah, well, it took a psychopath to save you from your crazy wife, okay? Now, to lead an organization like this, you have to make the hard decisions. You have to take control, because if you don't, then you get walked over, you got taken advantage of, okay? I'm sorry, but that does not jive with peace and love and harmony. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. I'm being honest.
Histobal, or NoHo Chris, as a unit ran circles around the criminal underworld. Apart, they were respected soldiers, but together they were an unstoppable force that did the near impossible. Their ultimate fate ripped them apart for multiple factors, and honestly, the most complex reasons the show had to offer. Both characters being strong and independent on their own, with an obvious and deep care for one another. After facing tragedy, Cristobal wanted to remove himself from the chessboard of crime, and Hank let it happen. NoHo Hank was exhibiting greed. He wanted to make a bunch of money off of they were like selling sand at the end of the show, which is really weird. They went from crime to like sand, but anyway. NoHo Hank eventually sent Cristobal up the river for money. Obviously, there's a little more factors to it than that. NoHo Hank was kind of backed against the wall. Cristobal got a little too close to the sun, and if he chose to leave the organization, then that was a death sentence. Cristobal didn't know that, or maybe he did and just chose not to care. Either way, Cristobal chose to die, more or less. Whether that was a place of sloth, or he actually wanted to do the right thing, that's, a little bit up for debate. I think Cristobal knew, and he was trying to see if NoHo Hank was going to stop it and save him. And NoHo Hank didn't. Now, whether that was Sloth on Cristobal's part, he didn't do his due diligence on who his partner truly was, or if something else was going on there. Either way, NoHo Hank, he didn't choose to save the love of his life or choose money, and he chose money over him.
Well, yeah. You're a businessman, not some low-life killer. You got all this through hard work, seizing on luck, and as a tribute to the love of your life, who was murdered by your enemies.
Obviously, greed is just like a over importance of money. Sloth is a character from the Goonies. No, Sloth is just being very, very lazy. Cristobal was kind of lazy. He could have told his wife that he was gay. He could have told his wife that, like, hey, listen, like, I've been seeing this guy, NoHo Hank, who's just like, I deeply love him. He could have gotten ahead of so many different things. Instead, he kept pushing it off until it reached ahead and started affecting people around him, which ultimately led to his demise. He was on top of the world and did a really, really good job of staying there. It's just when push came to shove and, like, powerful presences started to challenge him, he folded. And that's why I believe Cristobal exhibits the sin of sloth.
What are you doing right now?
Cashing out.
That's cool. That's really cool. Cool.
Lust is the desire for human flesh. Not like in a eating way, but in like a, physical touch, sensually charged touch. The character that exhibits this the most is the character of Sally. She is in a relationship, before the series begins, she's in a relationship with an abusive boyfriend. Claims that she left this character in a triumphant explosion, which never happened. Then gets in a relationship with Barry, who's a mass-murdering serial killer. And at the very end of the show, when Barry and Sally have to go undercover somewhere in the Midwest in the desert, there's a character who runs into Sally. She works at a restaurant and says, hey, listen, my brother robbed a bank, and a guy he knew at the bank robbery killed a guy. She then tells him that's hot, and then starts making out with him. This guy is related to a guy who knew a guy who killed somebody. And that gets her hot. Okay, what the So, like, up to that point, like, Sally as a character, like, she didn't really exhibit anything all that wrong with her. She obviously, like, had shortcomings as a person, but, like, she just chose her mates wrong. That sentence, that exchange between her and that character is an example of why her sin was lust. Had she not said that, I would have just been like, she's just like a normal person. But the fact that she was like willingly going to say like that she finds it hot that this third generation removed guy is hot and that starts making out with some dopey idiot because of it. What are we doing here? Sally, what are we doing? You're better than this. I thought you were. You're not, but here we are. The character of Sally, her entire identity hinges on like the mate that she's with. She puts a lot of importance on that because I'm not convinced that her identity is linked to herself.
Why aren't you leaving?
I feel safe with you.
You feel safe with me? Is that what you said? You feel safe with me?
So she is always constantly attaching herself to somebody else and more or less becoming codependent. Sally is a character, you're just like, oh, you want to see her win. Yeah, and then you get to the end and it's just like, wow, you just made like a lot of really wrong choices, and it's because like you're just so emotionally needy that you have to latch on yourself onto somebody else. The fact that like the people that you either are attracted to or attract are people who are mostly violent, you know, at a certain point, if everyone in the world smells like maybe it's you. So the ultimate fate of Sally is she has to raise Barry's son alone. Barry eventually is taken off the chessboard and, you know, she has to raise Barry's son alone. Barry's son, who's probably a fine human being, we don't know all that much about him aside from like he's 8 in half of the series, and then there's like 2 or 3 scenes where he's like a, you know, more or less a teenager. Sally has to live with it. She has to raise a son alone. That's the fate that she has put out for herself. Obviously, like, I'm sure Barry was a very controlling person, but she did not have to go on the lam with him. She could have, there are many options that she could have followed through with instead of, you know, following this known murderer into the darkness. But she now has to raise a son alone. More or less a trophy of her previous past of being attracted to violence.
Did Barry Berkman love my daughter? Did Barry Berkman love my daughter? Look at a man when he talks to you.
Now, Wrath is just essentially rage. Wrath is exhibited by Jim Moss. Jim Moss hadn't been introduced until the later seasons of the show, but he was felt throughout, being that his daughter, Janet Moss, Detective Janet Moss, was killed in the first season. He goes on a rampage to find his daughter's killer, and he succeeds. The thing is, his rage blinded him to the truth. So he reached the finish goal of getting Barry, got it, perfect, we got Barry. Then he wasn't satisfied with it, and he kept going. And then it started mutating. His drive became corrosive. His rage and wrath was used properly. It's just it kept mutating and rotating into something like unrecognizable, to the point where like true justice actually was not solved because of him. The improper story of Gene Kusnow being the true killer wasn't true, and that was due to Jim Moss's wrathful endeavor to try and find out what the truth is, and the truth that he discovered was not truly the truth.
That smell, the kind of smelly smell, the smelly smell that smells smelly.
And because of that, his killer is now glorified forever on a blockbuster movie. And eventually, I would imagine that this character eventually like comes to terms, that he like sobers up, and like years down the line, he realizes like, oh, like I kind of f***ed up. That would be a worse fate for that character more than anything. If he truly learned the truth, but because of the pieces that he put into motion, he now can't take it back. So that I find that to be like even more detrimental to his personality than anything else.
We're not the same, Barry. Because I'm a cop. And you're a murderer.
She is an extension of him. Like, her goal and his goal are nearly identical, so it's just he's carrying on the legacy of what her character was doing.
You know, I don't think that this is God's message for you. Because this goes against everything we believe. Killing is a sin, a big one. And I don't think that's
This isn't a discussion.
What do you guys think? Do you think that like Barry had like religious themes throughout? Because it's like outside of the Buddhist compound at the beginning of the show, like it really wasn't touched base on until the very end. Also, am I getting this right? If you were to shuffle the characters around, do you think any other characters exhibit these sins in a better way? Let me know. Let me know. Talk to me in the comments below. All right. This is more or less half-baked. I haven't seen anyone else talk about this, and I am not a theologian in this way or know enough about the filmmaking of Barry to say one way or the other. This is just an inference that I am making on my own. Make sure you tell me how stupid I look. Be sure to put that down in the comments for me, please. No, really, I do want to hear your opinions, because this is half-baked, but I want it to be a discussion. Don't be a insufferable piece of shit. God, just like, comment, and subscribe. I got nothing else. Just do it. All right. Yeah, I love Barry. I think Barry's a great show. Everyone should watch it. Just I don't know. Just watch it.